Namaste and greetings. I, Ayush Verma, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्था, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to the IMPRI Web Policy Talk. Today, we gather for a panel discussion focused on the urgent issue of air policy crisis, policy, politics, impact, a critical exploration of India's pollution emergency examining its political drivers, human impacts, and the urgent need for sustainable solutions. Organized by IMPRI Center for Environment, Climate Change, and Sustainable Development, this panel discussion brings together experts, practitioners, and policy thinkers to unpack India's persistent air pollution crisis by examining it through scientific, political, and human perspective. As toxic air levels continue to rise, especially in Delhi NCR region, the conversation explores how governance failures, policy choices, economic pressures, and institutional gap have contributed to the problem. This panel highlights the major sources and trends behind worsening air quality and the deep health, social, and economic consequences experienced most severely by vulnerable communities. Grounded in evidence and lived experiences, the discussion emphasizes the urgent need to strengthen political will, rethink governance system, and work toward coordinated, equitable, and practical solutions that can help build a cleaner, healthier, and more sustainable India. The chair and moderator for today's panel discussion is Dr. Urvashi Prasad ji, former Director, Office of Vice Chairman, Niti Aayog, New Delhi, visiting senior fellow, IMPRI. Today, expert panel includes Professor Anil Kumar Gupta ji, Professor and Chief Executive, Integrated Center for Adaptation to Climate Change, Disaster Risk Reduction and Sustainability, ICAS, IIT Roorkee, Mr. Soumya Dutta ji, founding co-convener, ASPAC, South Asian People's Action on Climate Crisis, former advisory board member, UN Climate Technology Center and Network, visiting senior fellow, IMPRI, Dr. Gufran Beig ji, Chair Professor, National Institute of Advanced Science Studies, IISc, founder, Project Director, System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research. The conveners of the programs are Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. To begin today's discussion, I'm honored to invite Dr. Urvashi Prasad ji, Chair and Moderator, to share her opening remarks. We welcome you, ma'am, and over to you.
Thank you, Ayush, and thank you to Arjun and Simi for organizing this discussion. It feels a little bit like deja vu, as I was saying. Every time this year we sort of collect to discuss this topic. But at least being a resident of Delhi, I haven't seen anything really change. And also being in the government, I haven't seen that kind of urgency or importance being given to this issue. I think a few remarks before we hand over to our panelists for today, who are extremely experienced in this whole area and can shed light on many dimensions of this topic. So I think one is that clearly it's not just an environmental issue, it is a public health issue, it is an economic issue as well. There are people who are almost saying that do we need to find another city to go and work? And I certainly feel that Delhi is not a city I can afford to live in anymore, because I have, of course, had to suffer the consequences of this air pollution by getting a form of lung cancer, which is triggered because of this pollution. It's a non-smoker's lung cancer. And so I ask myself this question. So it's not just environment, although that is a strong enough reason. It's also public health, it's also economic. And frankly, nobody should be living in this kind of air and that to the national capital. But now, of course, as we are seeing, it's not just a Delhi NCR issue. I think we can see that pretty much all of North India, at least, and even Mumbai, where I am right now, the AQI is not great. Um, so that I think is another issue, that we have emergence of many new sort of hotspots for this poor air quality. And also, I think the measurement of the air quality, it will be great to hear from our speakers, our experts, because a lot of question marks are being raised on whether our air quality data is reliable at all. So I think this will be a very important question to address to our experts. And I also feel, because today's title is Politics, Policy, and Impact, I think politics is so important. Ultimately, public health is politics. If we don't make it a mass issue, something which politicians feel is going to impact electoral outcomes, and certainly that hasn't happened so far in Delhi and any other place really. It's not going to get that policy priority either, because ultimately politics, policy, everything is very closely intertwined, and I've worked in that space and I've seen that. So, how do we get this onto agenda, in the sense not just that we do a few discussions or conversations at this time of the year every year, but to actually bring about real change? What do we need to do? And I know there are some protests happening, and one of our speakers is at one of the protests that's happening in Delhi right now as we're speaking. But what else can we do to really make this a mass issue? So I think those are some of the thoughts on my mind. And now, we'll hear from our experts, and then I'll have follow-up questions, and we can have some discussion around this very complex topic, obviously. So I'll now request Arjun, if you're here, or Ayush, if you can um, request our experts to weigh in the order you would like them to.
Yes, ma'am. So I would invite Gufran sir to please go ahead first. Over to you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you, Urvashi. Whatever the points you mentioned is quite pertinent. I will very briefly touch upon two, 3 points carrying forward whatever the message you are having. There are two, three agonies which are basically the contradictions are. Number one is that our air quality policy should health is not, although media, we all talk is being seen as an independent identity, as an impact is coming on health, but it should be health-driven measures, health-driven mitigations, and that we need to stress upon. Number two is that total scientific rigor is missing. When I say this, what scientific rigor is missing, which pertains to two, three things. Number one is, as you rightly mentioned, that the data which is coming, how much we should, trust and do this. Although, as far as Delhi is concerned, it is one of the best placed in terms of a network. But then often people talk about the transparencies. More or less, in fact, as compared to other part of India, Delhi is very well placed in terms of providing a quality data. But again, there are number of things. One of the most important thing which is happening and which is creating a problem which has not yet been fixed in spite of I have been telling for last 5 to 6 years is that what is that air quality index which is a representative of a city. Now, if you put all your 30 stations in a garden, it will underestimate. If you put most of your stations in a traffic junction, it will overestimate. Then what it should be? There are international guidelines which says that in a different micro environment, proportionally distributed stations, average of that would be closer to the real air quality index. That is not the case in any of the cities because there are proper guidelines in India that is all missing. What exactly it is available is that it should be 20 meters away from the immediate source and 200 meters away from the unpaved area. In a city like Delhi and metros in most of the cities, do you think that 200-meter free from any other things, is it a easy job to get it? So the point here is that either you end up putting your station in a deep in the garden or you don't get it. So these are the guidelines which need to be set up. Then only the transparency and all will come. Now, coming to the scientific aspect of it, is that scientific approach to the air quality mitigation and tackling need a paradigm shift. For example, we'll give the examples of Delhi. So far, Delhi CAQM acts as a national capital territory because that is what their mandate in surrounding areas. Now, the air quality do not see the administrative terminology, which is called airshed approach. We at NIAS, with the help of a principal scientific advisor to Government of India, have advising to the stakeholders that airshed approach. Airshed is a region which share a common meteorology or common climatology. So, in addition to the sources, it is very important that transport are coming from one place to another. These pollutants have a very limited lifetime. So within that, what are that area which can be considered under this airshed? So if you take a measures, whatever you have been taking in Delhi in complete airshed, then it will have a meaningful impact. Otherwise, as you can always see that so much measure has been taken, 2, 3, grade 3, 2, 4 has not yet come, although Mumbai has come within the poor range itself. That was another controversy. But then that I may talk later if time permits. But then most important thing is that we are not taking these steps in a airshed. So paradigm shift first need to be that 6 more states are involved in Delhi's unless we all there is a think of mitigation. There should be a body, or I do not know what may be, but then the idea, final outcome should be that you must take action, all those what you have been taking under grape. Otherwise, it is exercise in futile. And that is what exactly it is happening, which you can see on those times. As far as all the city general statement is this, that under the aegis of the climate change, things are really changing rapidly. And that is something which is becoming even more dangerous because the coastal city, the vulnerable cities, those are really in a big, problems. So I think I should stop at this point, and please go
Yeah.
ahead with the
Yeah.
next one.
Thank you. No, very important points you've made, and I will have some follow-up questions for you, but maybe we'll just hear from our other speakers, and then I'll come back to you because you've made several important points, right, from guidelines to how we measure to how we respond, and whether it's more reaction or whether it's more of an actual response. I think that is something that needs a lot of discussion. So thank you for that. So who do we go to next, Ayush?
Next, I would like to invite Mr. Himanshu Shekhar Mishaji, Senior
Yeah,
Editor, NDTV.
yeah. Over to you, Mr. Shekhar.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Noise audio कहाँ चला गया?
I don't think he can hear us.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Can I go
Mm.
ahead with my presentation? I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
yes.
please,
Okay.
please,
Okay.
please. Yeah.
It's a great privilege to take part in this very important discussion. This is something that affects every citizen in the country. Just a minute. There's a call for live, I think. I'm in the middle of reporting in Parliament, and there's a call for a live broadcast now on important
Yeah,
clarification
this
that
is a
has come
busy
from
time.
Communication
Yeah,
Ministry on
yeah.
Sanchar Sathi app. Yeah. Air pollution, of course, is a subject that I was very happy that in Parliament in the winter session that just started. On the very first day, there were several MPs who wanted a debate on air pollution. That's a very, very good sign in the sense that we seem far more sensitive. Now, I'm covering Parliament for 25 years, and it doesn't happen often that you see MPs demand a discussion on pollution. In fact, today there were two, three MPs who came with masks, air purifier masks, big masks, that we see normally astronauts use that. And so this is of course dominating the discourse, social discourse, political discourse, which is very important. And this has had an impact on the ground as well. And I'll put some facts, though the challenge on the ground remains. But there has been uh, some impact of the effort that has been made in recent years. I'll start with the pollution trend on Diwali in last 5 years. In 2021, the AQI level was 462 in Delhi NCR. In 2022, it declined to 302. 2023 again increased to 358. 2024 it increased, it again reduced to 339, but this year it again increased to 351. But if you compare with 2021, the AQI has declined from 462 to 351. That's the CPCB data that I'm mentioning now. And of course, the second important thing that has been noticed is the significant decline in farm fire incidents. Uh, I was looking at data in 2020, Punjab had recorded 83,000 Parali incidents. That was again an official data. But this year, the Parliament has been informed by Environment Minister that the number of Parali incident has declined to 5,114 this year. So from 83,000 to 5,100, approximately the figure that has now come. And this clearly shows the fact that the contribution of Parali in Delhi NCR's pollution has significantly declined. I have the numbers. Punjab recorded 5,114 incidents this year, and this is a 53% decline over 2024, 86% over 2023, 90% over 2022, and 93% over 2021. In Haryana, also, the number of Parali incident is 662 this year, 53% less than last year, 71% vis-a-vis 2023, 81% less than 2022, and 91% vis-a-vis 2021. So if you look at these Punjab and Haryana figures, it shows that there is a significant decline in Parali incident, and the contribution of Parali in Delhi NCR's uh, body of pollution has significantly declined. This is also mentioned in the CUAQM report. The Commission on Air Quality Management released a report 2 days back in which this data is again shared, and it says that all these efforts that have been made to sensitize the farmers, the administration, the agricultural department, the fact that special machines have been made available to farmers, and the other institutional measures that were initiated has in fact had some impact on the ground. But despite all these efforts, we continue to live a very miserable life in Delhi NCR. And that shows that if these efforts were not made, perhaps the crisis would have been far more worse than what it is today. Importantly, only yesterday, Center for Science and Environment released a new analysis report on the early winter air pollution trends. And it also mentions the fact that despite this significant reduction in Parali, the crisis on the pollution front remains on the ground. It says no improvement in long term trends, PM 2.5 rise accompanied by increasing levels of nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide, largely from vehicles and combustion sources, toxic cocktail that has gone unnoticed. Delhi's air quality is very poor to severe even when contribution of farm fires has lessened, means local sources are adding to pollution. Now, we know, we can see that the sources of pollution in Delhi NCR, the goalpost seems to be shifting, and there's a new challenge now coming up before us. More pollution hotspots have come up. That's the CAC analysis. Smaller towns in NCR more polluted with more intense smog episodes. We see that in the morning in many parts of Delhi NCR. Peak levels during early winter lower compared to previous year, but average winter trends have remained nearly the same. Small incremental steps will not help. Need deep structural action to cut emission from vehicles, industry, power plants, waste, households, and construction. Of course, that brings me to the efforts that COQM has made. And in fact, while in last few years the average AQI in Delhi has gone down, but we now know that the GRAP 3 remains in force in the Delhi NCR region, and there are lots of easing of action announced by CAQM last week, where they allowed some kind of construction activity because it was hurting livelihood among migrant workers, construction workers. But on the ground, we see that the crisis remains. And that essentially means that we have not seen any visible action on the ground when it comes to reducing, let's say, from the common man's perspective, the vehicular pollution, for instance. Now, then again, there are several other steps that have been initiated, but on the ground, the crisis is there, and I think they need to have more citizen movements against pollution. This is something that affects all of us. So I think in this age of digitalization, the increasing advancement of communication technologies, it's very important that we have far more aggressive digital campaigns. Media, of course, will have to play a far more proactive role. The schools, colleges needs to be the center point where we start these initiatives. What is happening now is a very reactive kind of strategy. Whenever a forecast is made that the pollution is likely to go up, we start ending up closing schools. But that is no solution because they're not addressing the primary causes of pollution. So I think while from parliament to the ground, we see people little more sensitive than they have been in the past. Parali incidents have significantly gone down, but we now know that there are new sources which are fueling pollution crisis in Delhi, NCR, and other big cities, and we need to have a far more concerted focus we need to put on. And I think these kind of deliberations and discussions will only help build up that discourse that needs to be built up to address the pollution crisis. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for sharing very detailed insights. And I think several points you've raised there, which we'll take to our other panelists as well and in the discussion. I think one is, yes, stubble burning this year, a lot of reports to say that instances have reduced and a lot of Delhi's problems are more local. So in that, raises a question of what we need to be doing, which is actually a response and not a reaction. As Mr. Shekhar was saying, everything we do with the graph 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is all very reactionary and knee jerk, and it's not very clear that is this really a systematic kind of response. It doesn't appear that way, certainly. So what do we need to do, given that it seems that right now at least a lot of Delhi's challenges pollution related are more localized as opposed to the stubble burning issue, which is of course got a lot of traction in terms of people talking about it as well in the last several years. So I think that is one important point to sort of discuss further. And also, I think the point which is also worth noting is that yes, during this time, air quality is even worse because of the winter and all of those factors which are mentioned in the CSC report as well. But actually, through the year, we have plenty of days which are pretty bad air quality days if you see from a health point of view. So it's really not just a winter problem. It's really not just a Delhi NCR problem. We have no new hotspots. So I think all of these issues are ones that we really need to systematically tackle, and maybe we'll touch upon some of these in more detail in our discussion. But before that, we must get comments from Mr. Datta. So over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any targeted question, or do I go just on whatever little I
You
have
can
heard.
make your opening remarks and then,
Okay.
we'll have questions and
Okay,
discussion. Yeah.
thank you. So first, thanks to IMPRI again for organizing this important discussion. Let me, what has been said and what the last 10 minutes, what I heard, let me emphasize two things. This has been not this year, this has been shown time and again that stubble burning, parali, is not the main problem. Earlier also, there were 5 source apportionment studies done, very scientific studies to show which are the primary sources coming from where. And even those shows stubble burning overall contributes 3 to 8%. So stubble burning do contribute, but stubble burning contribute to air pollution in a small window of time when the kharif crop is ready, and beyond that, Delhi's air pollution is very high. If it will be severe by other WHO standard, beyond severe, but our diluter standard also are very poor throughout the year except the monsoon, few of the monsoon months. So let us admit that stubble burning is not the primary problem, it's not even the secondary or tertiary problem. It's the fourth largest source when it is there. Second point, which has been shown time and again, that vehicular emissions is the primary source of PM 2.5, PM 10, and also the tertiary, secondary, and tertiary pollutants, which are ozone and the particulates that are created as a result of reaction of sunlight and nitrous oxide and etc. So very clearly, unless you address number one source, which is the vehicular pollution, you're not going to address the pollution problem, air pollution problem, in a major way. And we also know from studies that the second and third largest are road dust and construction. In that, not exactly in that order, this changes depending on which season we are talking about. You also have to remember this year, as of now, there is no severe winter. So the thermal inversion, which happens in Delhi in peak winter, which traps the ground level air, along with it the air pollution, close to the ground level, which is breathable level, it has not happened. So just few days ago, till a few days ago, it was quite warm. So that creates an updraft, and that takes away the air pollution to the upper layers and it blows away. So even the wind speed were fairly good. I don't know today because I just came back from a tour in Varanasi, but air speed also have been quite good, unlike some other years. So I don't think now we can blame only the external sources or parali, but the one external source that has been shown to contribute significantly is higher level air transport from nearby states where a lot of coal power plants are still operating. Delhi has phased out its coal power plant within Delhi's political territory, which is just about 1487 square kilometers. But the neighboring states, including Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, within 60 to 100 kilometers, there are several very big coal power plants, and which often do not run even the ESP, electrostatic precipitators. So there is a huge amount of fly ash which also goes up, and that also contributes to Delhi's pollution. So if Delhi's air pollution has to be tackled, one, Delhi's own vehicular and construction dust and road dust, the three the largest sources of air pollution in Delhi, originating within Delhi's territory, have to be tackled. In the vehicular emission, I'd also like to point to a very peculiar thing. See, diesel was subsidized long back with the idea that it's a public transport fuel. No public transport vehicle in the NCR today for the last 15 years runs on diesel anymore. We also know as comparative same engine capacity or relatively same diesel engine, if it is not the latest BS6, emits 6 to 7 times as much particulates as a comparatively similar powered petrol engine. So this policy, we had also talks in the presence of then Delhi ministers, we had presented these facts, but nobody seemed to be having a courage to target the SUV buyers, people who can buy 20, 25, 30 lakh vehicles. Why do we subsidize their fuel, which create 6 to 7 times the air pollution, which everyone else, including the poorest and not those who do not have any access to vehicles, most of the people, they have to also suffer. So when you talk about policy, it's not just about parali and all. You have your own areas. Why can't we stop supplying diesel subsidy? Why can't diesel be made like once diesel was made subsidized by government policy? Why can't in the Delhi NCR diesel be made much more expensive? You have to discontinue the incentive to buy diesel SUVs by the upper middle class and the rich, because they are a major contributor, as every study has shown that vehicular emission is the biggest, and within that, BS6 came in very recently. So most of the Delhi vehicles, diesel vehicles, are non-BS6. So they are a very major source. Third point that I would like to highlight, the air pollution impact. One is, what is the level? Air quality index, PM 2.5, 400 ppm, PM 10, that's one. But the exposure time, the total exposure that a person gets, is also equally important in creating this. So in this, I'm not against the technical intervention, because as a scientist, I like to be thinking about the technical intervention. But there are a lot of social interventions, policy interventions that can happen. If you look at India's earlier education policy, there was a very clear focus on common school, neighborhood schools. Today, we know almost every middle and upper middle class child, in the name of going to a good school, they travel 20 kilometers, 15 kilometers, or sometimes even from Delhi to Greater Noida. So 25, 30, 40 kilometers. And this contributes both to much higher running of a very large number of public vehicles. Second, this also exposes all these children to a far longer time of exposure in the very polluted air. So there are also areas in the social sphere, in the policy sphere, not exactly on fuel and air pollution, which can have a very significant impact. And those have to be considered. A similar impact, as I said, if you intervene in the choice of vehicles and fuel by incentivizing or disincentivizing, then that can also translate within a short time to significant results. And the last point I'd like to highlight at this, because I think the first round is for 6 minutes or 7 minutes, something like that. So the last point I'd like to highlight very quickly is that there has to be incentives for Delhi people. The kind of injustice that now happens, the biggest amount of contributor to Delhi's air pollution also have access to the booming sale of air purifiers, air conditioners coming with built-in air purifiers, HEPA filters. So the upper class, middle class, upper middle class, they are feeling the actual impact much less than those who have to work in the street. Delhi has lakhs of street vendors. Delhi have lakhs of auto rickshaw drivers, rickshaw pullers, porters in places like Ajadpur Mandi, construction workers. They are not contributing to this. So like we talk about climate justice, here this is an extreme injustice. And the people talking and suggesting suggestions, they also come from this class, like EV. So I think we need to change in the policy making sphere. We need to change the weightage that we give to different voices from different segments, find out what they are facing and what actually solutions will work for them. Also take a little hard step socially. Like one I said, if you simply implement the neighborhood school policy, which was there in 1968 National Policy of Education, which was there in 1986 second adopted version of National Policy on Education. It was approved by the Parliament. It was thrown out of the window to facilitate the private education system for profit-making education. School education has been made profit-making, and that was one of the primary drivers. I think this is time for taking hard decisions in the interest of every citizen of Delhi, and not only Delhi. Today, it's not only even Delhi NCR, because the last studies have shown roughly around 60 to 65% of Indian districts face severe air quality, except the monsoon months. So there are other social solutions as well as technical solutions, but we have to fast for any solution. You have to admit that there is a serious problem. You cannot just escape by spraying water before your monitoring stations to show that, okay, the actual results are there. Today, we all have monitoring instruments. I carry my monitoring I have 2-3 monitoring instruments of various degrees of accuracy. I carry them. So today, trying to fool people by just spraying water in front of that doesn't work. So first thing, the government has to admit there is a very serious problem. It's not an air pollution problem. It's a serious public health crisis. That once they admit it, I think once that urgency comes in, then there are a lot of solutions, both social and technical. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Datta. And I think you put it very clearly, and that's how it should be. I think the whole air quality data, sort of the mockery that we are making by doing this spraying and trying to, I mean, forget the international sort of shame on that, but I think just for the national capital to be doing something like this, it personally it angers me because I'm also a victim of this collective failure. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. I've never been around a smoker. And for me to get stage 4 lung cancer at the age of 35, I think is a huge collective societal failure. And I wish we would see it with that kind of seriousness rather than making a mockery by just trying to manipulate our data and our readings. So thank you for really putting that out. And as you said, solutions can be found, solutions do exist. There are experts like yourself and so many others that we have. But who's listening and who really has the will to do all of this in a truly responsive manner and not just a reactionary manner? I think that is really the key question here for us. So thank you so much for that. And I do have some questions, but I'm not sure. I don't see Dr. Gufran here, and I don't know if Mr. Shekhar is here. Can the IMPRI team advise?
Yes, Gufran sir had a weak network, so he dropped off, I guess.
Okay, is Mr. Shekhar here? I th
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I think he's here. Yeah, yeah. No, Mr. Shekhar, if you have the opportunity to respond, just a quick question following up on what you said that this time, at least some parliamentarians seem to be wanting to talk about this. How do we take it from that to a much bigger issue? And I think, like Mr. Datta said, that it's no longer just even the winter. I mean, the winter hasn't even properly come in Delhi yet, and we already have such a bad situation. And it's not just Delhi, it's now large parts of India. So how do we really get that political momentum from just being a few of our parliamentarians wanting to raise this to really making a much more broad-based issue? And how media can perhaps support in doing that? What your thoughts might be? Request you for your thoughts,
Well,
please.
there are two, three things. One is that I did interview Secretary Ministry of Earth Sciences, and he was very categorical that the meteorological conditions in Delhi NCR region is such where the wind speed has slowed down. Now, this is something that several Met scientists have also told us in different interviews, that one of the reasons why you see the spike in pollution is because the meteorological conditions are changing and the winter is setting in. And importantly, the wind speed has slowed down. This is something I remember the last interview I did. The Met scientist Naresh Kumar told me very categorically that in next 7 days, the wind speed is expected to be 5 to 10 kilometers per hour in Delhi NCR region. And we do know that these meteorological conditions worsen the pollution crisis. So that is one of the reason why we are struggling with it. Second, of course, Parliament is the highest forum for a discussion and debate. Uh, I think there are several MPs who want a debate. Ranjita Ranjan, Dipendra Huda, Priyanka Gandhi, in fact, on first day had said that we want a discussion on pollution. So the idea is that it's only when Parliament, the highest political forum in the country, takes up a subject for a detailed discussion and debate that new policy ideas can come that is often seen as a precursor to action on the ground by the government, that in a way also an opportunity for members of parliament to hold the government accountable to what steps have been initiated. And as has been said by my previous panelists, that on the ground, not much has changed, even though everyone knows what are the primary sources of pollution. And as I also mentioned in my opening remarks, that when it comes to addressing the vehicular pollution issue, we don't see a proactive strategy on the ground. At least the effort that should be made by state government should be is not being made. In the previous crisis, we had used to see meeting of chief ministers of Punjab, of Haryana, of Delhi, of Uttar Pradesh to deal with a pollution crisis because it was seen as a crisis that can only be collectively addressed. But so far in this season, we have not seen any such meetings to, synergize the action that is being taken by district administration and city administration in different parts of Delhi NCR. Delhi had its own strategy. Now Faridabad has its own strategy. Noida comes under Uttar Pradesh. So likewise, the synergy that is needed to address this crisis is not very clearly visible on the ground. Governments don't seem to be becoming so proactive. The only institution that is at the forefront is the CAQM, which routinely issues data, facts, reports. In fact, the last report, it very categorically said that when it comes to addressing the roadside dust, there are 35 roads intersections under MCD where they found the dust level were much higher than what is usually allowed, whereas those roads under management of NDMC or CPWD were fairly well managed, but the MCD was not taking proactive steps to address the roadside dust issue. So while the problem has been flagged from courts to the ground, but I think still this is the third day of the winter session of Parliament. The first 2 days, because of politics on SIR, did not work. Today, fortunately, Parliament has resumed functioning, and we should expect a debate on pollution very soon in Parliament. I think Monday, of course, is the day for a debate on Vande Mataram, and Tuesday, Wednesday, the electoral reforms will be taken up. The two priorities that were decided in the Business Advisory Committee meeting yesterday, chaired by Lok Sabha Speaker. But after that, I'm sure that the debate on pollution will take place. And that, of course, will be the first opportunity for national political parties to flag issues and raise concerns. And then government also will then have to respond to those questions. And that, in a way, is seen as a platform where you can make the government accountable for what is happening on the ground. So I think I expect more movement, but in television channels, there's a lot of news now coming up early in the morning when they see smog. The reporters go on the ground and they do these live reporting. But I think it's the agencies who have to act on the ground. Sensitizing people is, of course, one part of the effort that is needed. But on the ground, it is the policy action that has to be visible. And I think we should expect more action from the ground. And
Right.
especially after the debate, if it happens in Parliament, I think media also will give more attention to that debate, and
Yeah,
that should galvanize more action on the ground.
that's right. Yeah. So I think let's hope that have a constructive and also uh, the the government itself. And actually, the point that Mr. Datta made about the role of neighboring states, Haryana and UP. For the longest time, we had this, different government in Delhi, different government there, center. Actually, right now, all of those states and Delhi and the central government is ruled by the same political party. So really, I mean, there can't be a better time for them to align and do this. But I actually read an interesting piece today where they said, why doesn't it become a big political issue? Because it's not very divisive actually, and you cannot really pass the blame because everybody is sort of responsible in some way or the other. So it's not that attractive to politicians because you can't really divide, on this ground, and there is a sort of collective responsibility here. So that's an interesting perspective, and I hope that changes and we take it up as a collective responsibility rather than just seeing it as an issue we can't divide people on and therefore not politically sellable. Because really it's an air that all of us are breathing. So it should impact everybody to that extent. But I'll just go back to Mr. Datta. Yes, you have put in a comment on the wind speed as well. So request you to weigh in on that. And also we have a lot of questions I see in the chat box on the waste to energy power plants. I know you've spoken about a lot of these issues, but if you'd wish to comment on this.
I thought, thank you. I thought about talking of the WTE, but I was trying to hurry up, so I shut up maybe well within time. So first comment is, with all respect, because I had also had several discussions with some IMD people. See, present condition is not too bad for meteorological conditions. Both the temperature, because two things affect the ground level air pollution, temperature and wind speed, apart from how much pollutant is coming. So that's the question of tackling at source, but whether it will be stagnating there or will be taken away depends on temperature and wind speed. So currently, for the last several days, it's not too bad. It's normal to better than normal for this kind of time in the calendar. So I don't think we can blame winter for this present. And when the Diwali was there, if you recall, that day, I don't remember the exact timing and dates, but the records stopped after 9:99. Several stations stopped recording, and the peak was reported from some stations at 1700 plus. So I think we need to, and Diwali time, it was quite warm.
Yeah, it was quite warm.
It was not like winter Diwali, it was more like a sort of autumn Diwali. So I think this also needs to be stopped, that we either try to blame the Parali or try to blame the weather. Because one thing is very clear, you stop the source. Second, how does it build up? If there is a genuine reason, if there is a large meteorological condition, you can't easily change that. But if it is not there, you can do something else. So one is, as you also picked up what I said, the transboundary transportation of pollutants is an important thing. And if you look at the wind patterns in this season, from south westerly to this time, it turns northwesterly. So the fine dust that comes from Haryana, Punjab, or Rajasthan, including the power plant finer pollutant, because normal dust generally do not go into 2.5, but emissions, they have a lot of 2.5. So the 2.5 signature also shows. So I think those can be tackled, as you rightly pointed out, with the governments now under the same political party. So same kind of, they can cooperate hopefully much better. The WTE problem is a major one, because government of India is pushing very hard for more than 300 WTEs in urban areas. And WTEs, by the nature of Indian West, we in Delhi generate around 0.6 to 0.7 kg per day per person. So Delhi generates around 12,000 tons plus of waste per day. The only thing that the government is now targeting, how to get rid of that, and they have found this solution of incineration, which is nicely called WTE. But the problem is Indian solid waste, a large part of them is wet waste. Unlike in the West, where a lot of paper, and that's why all WTE plants try to burn the plastics. And if you burn the plastics, which are either PET bottles or any other polyethylene or the polystyrene bottles, then you create furan and dioxide, which are two very, very poisonous toxic gases which cause cancer. So this has been shown time and again that having WTs within cities, and it is all within cities. Look at the Sukhdev Bihar WT. Look at the new one in the Gazipur WT. So all these create a huge amount of toxic gas, because they have to burn this plastic to run this to create enough heat. Otherwise, if you try to burn wet waste, actually you have to add coal or oil. You have to, not coal, you have to add oil. That they often do, but they also burn plastics. So WTE, pushing WTEs as a solution to get rid of the garbage heap, I think is a completely wrong solution. And once, before it is burned, you have a hold on the pollutant. It's a large heap. Once you burn it and the gases went into the atmosphere, you have absolutely no hold. And we are not investing enough money in, like Singapore has done, whatever they had done earlier in incinerator-based waste handling facilities. They have put very advanced filters. We are not doing that. Those are very expensive. So we are actually creating an air pollutant which is invisible, but which is highly toxic, carcinogenic. So I think that's an added dimension. And but There is a very large plan that WT is now, after the Timarpur one, the first one in Delhi failed. They're still standing as a ghost. There are several new ones coming up, and there are all of these are within very congested residential areas. So I think that's an additional threat the government is itself creating, which will show up. I mean, I was very sorry to hear about your case, but I also suffered from 2016, just before Diwali, when the air quality went up to 700 plus. My heart condition worsened, and I had to go and install a pacemaker because my heart rate fell around 36, 37. So it's not a case of you and me and others. Lakhs of people are facing in Delhi and in the NCR, lakhs of people are facing this kind of condition. So we need whatever quote unquote solution we need. We need to take this based on scientific understanding and based on larger public health consideration, not on short term and narrow vision consideration like getting rid of the garbage heap. So I think WT is whoever has raised this, thank you. WT is a major problem. It's going to be a major problem. And WTs will add a pollution which will not be able to see. It will not be a visible smoke, but it will cause massive dangers.
Yeah. No, thank you, Mr. Datta. Another thing that I do hear, which is, I think, common refrain that Delhi's geography is such that we cannot do anything about it. What would you say to that? I mean, I don't believe, obviously, that that is true, but I hear a lot of that discourse on social media as well, that, we have such a geography, we're just sort of trapped here. There's nothing we can do, really. So obviously, yeah, I don't think that.
That's not fully true. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's what I was saying. Please go ahead. Yeah.
That's not fully true, but there is some grain of truth in that.
Yeah.
Because during the change of wind patterns, during the monsoon, the wind flows from one direction. Then there is a lull when actually the speed drops. Then it changes over to the northwest. So this kind of changeover period, Delhi has a low airspeed, plus being covered technically by the Aravallis on the west and partly to the southwest. There is a consideration that, okay, Delhi's pollution cannot actually, if it is cold air during the winter season, it cannot easily escape to that season. But that consideration is part because in the winter season, the air flows from the northwest. So it's not throwing them away, it's bringing in. So that's one thing which, as I said, it has a part truth, but not full truth. The second is, if we have to take off this question of Delhi's geographical and meteorological condition, that you cannot change. But some factors, I will not ridicule this. If this was a sincere effort of creating artificial rain by seeding, cloud seeding, I would not ridicule it. But this turned out to be a laughable exercise somehow. I don't know why, because I have not followed it clearly. But there are other measures. You can create surfaces in cities which are better able to help circulate the air, at least if not in winter, but even in winter. So what I'm saying is you can create large areas of surfaces which either hits up the air around that or in some way channelize the air, let the air go into a clear channel. For that, you need a larger scale planning, city level planning, or at least larger blocks level planning, how that pollution will move. Even if the airspeed is there, the airspeed has to get an unimpeded passage. If it is continuously zigzagging, narrow lane and closing, then even with a higher airspeed, the pollution gets trapped. So this kind of planning needs to be done, and this kind of mapping can only be done by a large scale who has access to very large scale, both mapping and the city's actual plans, the building plans, the lanes, the road plans, everything. So I think it's only the government and the municipal corporation, they have access to this. So they can do this. So it's possible. I don't fully subscribe to the fact that Delhi's condition is so bad, geographically and meteorologically, if nothing can be done. It's an excuse. But there is a little bit of truth in that. Delhi, particularly in seasons, Delhi is a little bit handicapped, but more because the transportation of pollutants from outside sources, which are major sources, the coal power plants.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we can't change, we can't, but what we can, we certainly must. I see a hand raised, Mr. Suhas. Is there a way for him to be able to ask his question?
Yes, ma'am. He has mic access now. So Suhasji, you can go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. It's Miss Suhas. One of my questions
Apologies.
I put in the chat has been answered by Soumya about the waste to energy. But that you have given me a chance, I'm wondering whether the additional air travels, the number of airports being settled and too much emphasis on the air travel, does it also contribute? I don't know. That's
Should
all.
Yeah, Mr. Datta, if you'd like to
Huh.
take that.
Actually, it's a good question because the aircraft turbine engines, they do really consume far greater lot of energy, and they do create, because it's basically kerosene. What the jet engines burns is basically kerosene. So if you burn kerosene, and the jet engines burn kerosene much less efficiently than an internal combustion engine, because they don't get the resident time. If you study thermodynamics, it's very clear. So it's true that if you have a lot of aircrafts taking off or landing from any place, and being an airport, the aircraft are burning much more fuel per kilometer than if they are cruising at a high altitude. And in high altitude, the space to disperse the pollution is much higher. So in and around the airport, and several kilometers around that, obviously there will be a spike in some kinds of pollution, some of the components. And that you cannot avoid unless you change the fuel. And the fuel is basically, as I said, aviation turbine fuel is basically kerosene, which is not very clean fuel. And for people's information, if you think of carbon footprint, flights are 6 to 8 times as much carbon intensive per passenger kilometer as a normal good train travel. 6 to 8 times per passenger kilometers.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you.
That's
Thank you so
another wrong
much.
policy
Yeah.
that Indian government is doing, that they're cutting down on trains, ordinary trains, and they're encouraging aviation. That's not an environment climate friendly policy. It's a policy against the climate. It's for
Correct.
policy for climate change.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Datta, for taking those questions as well. I see Dr. Gufran has joined us again. So if you can hear me,
Yes, I can.
Dr. Gufran, then just to follow up on some of the points you made, you did speak about guidelines and how we, need to have something which is more appropriate for our context. So who should be doing that, or how should we do it? That would be one question. And secondly, on the air quality data, now that we are seeing that, it's not just a winter issue, but actually for pretty much the rest of the year also, at least as per international norms, but even sometimes as per our own norms, we're not doing so well on that. So has there been any analysis done around that, or do we look at those trends as well, or are we only looking at this sort of peak winter pollution period, as we tend to call it? So yeah, your thoughts on both of those would be great.
See, the last point which you talked about is related with the peak winters, and there are two important aspects which I would like to bring. One is that is a long-term policy which is going to work. The short-term quick fixes, whether it is a cloud seeding or whether it's sprinkling of the water or stopping the construction and all, those are not going to work. As compared to the earlier speaker, some of them have mentioned about new sources as coming. I little disagree that there are no new sources which are coming basically. It is something, whatever the sources are there, they are there. It is all know these are the sources, these are the solutions. One of them obviously is the transport sector, which in any way contribute about 40 to 45%. Airshed approach is one of them. Now we cry or we do actions when there are extremes. So from maximum noise comes during this time, October, November time. December, January is a different, but still it came because there is a peak in this one. Earlier, there used to be a Deepavali, and then there is a Parali burning that is used to multiply everything, and there used to be emergency. This time, Deepavali was much earlier. So that problem of the first or second week of that has not happened. Then, there was a flood huge. So the Parali burning started about 10 days later and then continued up to that. So peak has come in the mid of November. But now we need to have a very serious retrospection that Indian government is certainly taking Indian government is taking a lot of steps in a long term for eradicating the pollutions. Now pollution remains more or less the same even in October, November. If Parali has stopped, and then if it is not contributing anything on that particular, I'm talking about 45 days where everybody cries maximum, where it becomes an emergency, where a lot of hospital admissions takes place. Then from where the new thing is coming, there are no new things are coming. In fact, it cannot accelerate because as the government is taking the steps, it is going down. So this needs a very serious retrospection instead of assuming that Parali has stopped. If it is stopped, suppose how the fields are being emptied. Is there any breakthrough technology has come? So there are some of the things which is happening that farmers have started having a different timings, and then satellite pass once or twice in a day. So whether it is capturing or not, these are all the things. I am not vouching anything that it is not stopped or stopped, but it requires a deeper scientific retrospection. But certainly accepting transport sector, because the rapid growth of the vehicles is happening, I think other sources have a break on that. For example, Ujjwala scheme has come, although it is coming back again because of the refilling of the stations. But then that is where the point is. So one need to have this kind of a thing. Then as far as data is concerned, as you can see that during the Deepavali night, out of 45, there are 35 stations has stopped reading in a time where it is supposed to be the maximum. Now, had it been that kind of thing, air quality would have gone to severe. So that also makes a lot of difference in this. So for any kind of a retrospection, for any kind of a taking a kind of a steps, transparency in the system for the policymakers, that becomes a very, very important aspect of that. What else? First point you made it, madam? Urvashi, madam?
I was asking about the guidelines since you said, that's not very
Yes.
appropriate for
So
us.
that is where exactly it reflects to the fact that why air quality, Mumbai air quality remains moderate to poor, whereas Sky tells a different story. Why the air quality has next day of Deepavali remained in the very poor only, did not go to the severe category, whereas everybody felt equally the heat. That is where the answer of these questions are. WMO guidelines says that so the question is, what could be the air quality index of a particular city one should consider? If you are having a 2 stations, you take an average. If you are having a 10 station, you take an average. If you are having a 40 station, you take an average of that. Where are they are located? If 2 stations are there, they are located in a traffic junction, you will overestimate the air quality. If you are having a 3 stations which are deep in the garden, then you will have a very poor, very good air quality where the city is ignored. So there should be a proportionately sitting station in a different micro environment, which could be background, upwind direction, downwind direction, industrial, downtowns, road junctions, industrial corridor, coastal corridor, if at all it is there. So these are the places where proportionately one has to do that. Average of that then would be a true reflection of the air quality index of a particular city, which is not there. These guidelines. There are a number of other guidelines. You must have seen a very important figure, 999. the PM 2.5 stops at 999. Until last year, it was happening. Why? Because there is a guidelines in the specification of PM10 and 2.5 instruments which says maximum limit 1000 microgram per meter cube. Hourly average goes to 2000, 3000, 5000. There are instruments which are available which can give, for example, dust PM10 in the Gulf countries go up to 5000 microgram per meter cube also. So there are instruments which can measure all those things, but since guidelines is this that you put, so you put a tab at 1000. Until recently it was there, that is why it stops at 9999. So point, and that is being done some 20 years back, some guidelines this that it should be like that. That time that was a level of knowledge. Yeah, that time it was happening. Analyzers were also not there. We could have measured all those kind of things. So these are the things which requires again a serious relook and guidelines of CP, because the SPCBs people who are there, they need to follow the guidelines basically, and that is what it is it is happening. So they see this, then there is, and then the most important thing is, for all those things you require a scientific advisory body or a resource framework which can look and tell about all those things. So the bonding between a scientific minds and the policy makers, somehow that particular thing is missing at this stage of time, which requires a kind of a resource framework which can time to time provide a advisory, provide a kind of a guide, provide some kind of a recommendations, so that we are perfectly okay in terms of a data transparency understanding. It is not that somebody is doing it intentionally, but it is so happening that because of the guidelines which is not there, or which are because of the scientific advice and recommendation which is missing, I think we get into this kind of a thing.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gufran. And Professor Anil Kumar Gupta has joined us. So, he joined in a bit late, but Professor, we've been discussing this issue from various dimensions: the politics, the policy, the impact, the public health impact, and also solutions. How do we do it? Factors responsible, the Parali versus the more localized factors, other issues like waste to energy, vehicular contributions to this whole problem of pollution. So we've tried to touch upon various issues. Would love to hear your thoughts on how we can really move ahead from here, and what we should be doing at these various levels. Policy, politics. How do we try and address some of this? And then I'll go to my other panelists for closing remarks. So over to you, Professor Gupta.
Thank you, Dr. Urvashi, and my apology for being late. Actually, there was a sudden engagement that has come, so it was a bit unavoidable. I'm sure that the issue of air pollution and its attributes have been discussed at length by the previous speakers. I could listen some of the points from Dr. Gufran Beig also. And the last aspects which he had been referring to, I totally agree that basically it requires a holistic approach. And at present, what we find is not to that level, to the extent it should be there. He was talking about the air quality index also. We would agree that the soil that we have in India and the similar other countries, we have the natural problem of the dirt. So even if there's no air pollution source, then also we have some good level of particulates in the air. How do we consider this aspect? And I recall that long back when I was working in the area of air pollution very actively, then we had initiated an approach that was called a regional air quality index. So not only looking at the standards, but the reference level of the particulates in case when there is no pollutant. Second thing, when we talk of the holistic approach, you were referring about the one is that the contributions from the biomass burning, like parali. When parali is one, there are other sources of biomass burning also that takes place. And what we have seen that if we just look at past 10 years data or 15 years data, so the burning of parali started a few years back. It became intensified. It was earlier also, but too much thing started few years back. And then it spread to nearby areas. Initially, it was in Punjab, then Rajasthan, then now you see in part of Madhya Pradesh also, part of Uttar Pradesh also, Rajasthan also. So everywhere this is there. It needs a systemic approach of examination that why it happened. And so there is a aspect of climatic shift, the shift of the sowing season, the number of days of required for the crop maturing. So these are the dimensions which are seldom taken into account when we talk about the air quality management, because these aspect does not directly fall into the domain of our air quality related issues. But this has been a kind of a core requirement that the farmers started burning this thing, and certainly they subsidy on fertilizer, so they no one want to convert it these biomass into mulch, do mulching and convert into these kind of things. When we look at the vegetation in Delhi, we find that the vegetation in Delhi has grown particularly fast, past 20 years. And now we say that Delhi is relatively quite green. But what kind of vegetation? What kind of species? If we see around, so mostly it is Kikar, the Prosopis. There, the research is also required on the sink potential index that is based on the stomatal aperture. Very less research is there in this dimension. And the stomata, when it releases gases, it also releases water vapor, particularly in winter season, and there the wind is otherwise also very low. So when the air is laden by the air becomes moist, air is laden by the water vapor. Uh, Professor Gufran Beig might have already discussed this issue. He's a well-known expert on the atmospheric science. So a dry air and air laden by with the water vapor, how the pollutants will behave, and how the transport of the air pollutants would be affected. So this is also very important dimension. We need to see very less research. I think no research is there on this dimension. My team has just started working on the relationship between the vegetation index and vegetation, heat, humidity, and the air pollution. We are not sure that do we find any kind of a conclusive this thing, but we are trying to look at this. And finally, it is required that we look at the broadly that airshed management approach, like in like we talk of the watershed. So here also, because the dust when the dust becomes airborne in Rajasthan, then also it travels to NCR region. In otherwise also without if we leave the air pollution aside. So this is the airshed characteristics of this place. So we need to look at this dimension also, and that is the reason that whether the parali is burned elsewhere, maybe 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers, then this characteristics basically makes the particulates travel to this direction. So these are few things which come to
Yeah.
my mind to bring on the floor for further discussion, and maybe second round of discussion when we organize. But yes,
Correct.
this is a very important issue, and it requires a concerted effort, and it requires an interdisciplinary team to be formed to study all the studies done by others, because there are several scientific studies are coming, but there should be a group which studies all the studies and comes up with a clear action plan. So I think that is
Correct.
the requirement. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. And as you said, it's such a complex topic. This should probably be a series of conversations, not just one. And maybe IMPRI will take that up. But I'll just, in the interest of time, we have about 10, 12 minutes. So I'll request our other panelists, if you want to respond to anything that Professor Gupta has brought up, or just your closing reflections. We'll start with you, Mr. Datta.
Okay, thank you again. I think I'll just bring in another issue which is important today, and it will become even more important tomorrow and day after. That means in the years and decades. I'll not try to reflect on any of the points raised. See, if you look at the recent, as I said, I have also shared this. The current, as the winter comes, there is a change in wind direction. And as I also pointed out, Professor Gupta also pointed out that transboundary transport of pollutants is a major, sometimes becomes a very major source. But one of the barriers that used to prevent it to some extent is the Aravallis, if it is vegetated and as a hill also. If you look at the recent Supreme Court judgment, uh, and I am not criticizing Supreme Court with the risk of contempt of court, but the Supreme Court, in all its quote unquote wisdom, categorized Aravallis mountain range as those which are 100 meters plus over the surrounding elevation level, which is, I think, an extremely unscientific, completely devoid of understanding of what mountain ranges are. And if that is done, already I have visited many places already in the Aravallis, even in the protected forest. There are very large number of stone quarrying crushers going on. And stone quarrying and crushers really contribute a massive amount of particulates to the air. And if you go to Nimka Thana, Alwar, all these belts, the air is thick with not only PM10, but even finer sometimes. So categorizing this kind of Supreme Court judgment, which was pushed by some groups, I think will create more air pollution for Delhi NCR. And we need to really you cannot go and challenge them, but you can have a review petition. So something which is critical and which will become even more problematic in the future. I think the air pollution side also need to see the other side, like Aravalli protection is not looked at by air pollution side. Similarly, my last comment will be, when we look at air pollution in Delhi NCR, we only look at the source and how it transported, etc. But as I mentioned briefly in my first 6 minutes, is that air pollution, the AQI, the PM 2.5, 10, the ground level ozone, the NO2, the SOx, NOx, these are important. But how much exposure one gets, that's also equally important in terms of public health. So if simultaneously, we must think of how to reduce the exposure that people get, and particularly those most vulnerable, young children and the aged. So I think this side is often neglected completely, but those are extremely important from the public health perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Datta. Mr. Shekhar, if you're there, any closing reflections, comments from you? I don't think he's there. Yeah, there is a lot of confusion, Dr. Gufran. Good you put this point up. So if you'd like to take it up, in your closing comments, how do we look at this whole Parali issue?
See, the one which I had put out is this, that in a couple of years back in the apex court also there was a lot of debate, sir, it is 3% contribution, some says it is 13%, somebody told no sir, 45% and all. And there was a lot of confusion in the apex court also. But this is very important for all of them. I tried to explain at that time also that Parali happens only in 40 days, 45 days, a window in which also there are many days where the Parali is not there. So if you go in a particular day, Parali contribution in Delhi's air quality index has gone as high as 45% also. For example, this year it has gone to 22% maximum. But then that is individual one day. If you take a whole 40 days average, or let us say 2 months average, then it comes to be about around 12 to 15%. So I had put it this. But if you average when there is no Parali is burning with 365 days, it will be 3%. Without mentioning that this 3% is coming from where, without this coming this. So obviously in a yearly wise, 3% doesn't really matter. But it matters because maximum hue and cry happens during maximum air quality index goes to this particular time, and extreme events takes place. Extreme exposure means more hospital admission, more hospital visits. That is why people feel uncomfortable, and that is what it happens. And unfortunately, it get coincided with other extreme events like festivals, marriage and all, so it spice goes very high. So that's something which I thought I would like to explain here. So parali isn't important. If at all it is burning, we shouldn't ignore it, because it extreme events are problem. But obviously the crux of the problem background is this: long term measures, science backed policies, time to time updating as and when new knowledge is pouring in, instead of relying on 20 years old documents and religiously following those guidelines. We need to have that. There should be kind of a body we should have to have. And the central of the problem is that airshed approach. Whether you talk about airshed, you talk about transboundary pollutant, you talk about long-term transport, or you talk about only transport, it is more or less the same thing, that you would like to count transboundary pollutants, which will be taken care by the all the policies should roll around airshed regions. Unless you take that particular thing, talk to each other, make airshed boundary as the final boundary in air quality tackling rather than an administrative boundary, these things are going to stay. So I think these are the steps we should take it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gufran. And, it's been a fascinating conversation with all our experts. We could go on much longer, but we're almost at time, and we will follow up on this, because this is obviously too big an issue to cover in just one session. But before I hand over to the IMPRI team to formally conclude this, just, from my point of view, and we don't have Bhavreen ji with us from Warrior Moms. She's at a protest right now as I speak in Delhi. And I think it's something that we need to humanize. This is not just AQI numbers. It's not just something we look on our phones at the AQI readings and say, okay, it's a bad situation. There are people like us who are literally paying with our health and paying with our lives because of this situation. So it must be humanized. And I think, therefore, I'm moderating this because for me it has really impacted my life in all possible ways. And I think if that is not enough of a reason to act, then I don't know what is. And so I really hope that we will proactively, seriously take this up, not just reactively, and find the solutions. Like you said, part of them might be to reduce the actual sources of this pollution or tackle that. But the other very important part is the exposure. How do we reduce the exposure of people, vulnerable groups, or anybody really? I was a very fit young person, and still this happened to me. So I don't think, it's just the vulnerable groups who are actually susceptible. I think we're all susceptible to what this kind of horrible air can do to us. So I really hope we will take it up on a war footing. And the Prime Minister loves to use the word mission mode. And I think this needs to be really tackled on a mission mode, on a war footing. So thank you again to all the panelists, and I'll hand over to the IMPRI team. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As we conclude this panel discussion on air policy crisis, policy, politics, impact, I, Ayush Verma, on behalf of IMPRI, Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, New Delhi, extend my heartfelt gratitude. Our deepest thanks to our chair and experts for the day. Thank you all thank you to all our esteemed panelists for their insightful and thought-provoking addresses. Your expertise and perspective have greatly enriched today's discussion and provided us with valuable takeaways on this critical topic. We deeply appreciate your time and contribution. We also thank all participants who joined us live, raised pertinent questions, and contributed to today's dialogue. For those watching later on YouTube channel, listening to the podcast or reading our publication, we deeply value your engagement and interest. We hope we hope you continue to join future IMPRI web talks and web policy learning programs. Wishing you all a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.